Welcome to Shoe Talk for September 2024. It's crazy, we're already at the end of September. Now, this month has been a little bit different than my typical months because I took 10 days off from running, which is the most I've taken off from running for almost 4 years. I don't take a lot of long breaks from running, but I really looked at this as a bit of a reset just to let my body sort of rest and not deal with running every day and just kind of do some other things. Specifically, I was on a road trip on the west coast of the US for those 10 days, driving from San Francisco to Seattle. Now, Northern California, the Oregon coast into the high desert of Oregon, beautiful. Some of the most beautiful places I've ever been, which is why I'm considering relocating there at some point next year. And I've talked about this a bit on the channel. We'll see about that. But what was really interesting about that trip is that it allowed me to drive through a couple key areas that are really relevant to the history of running. Now, I've talked about in other videos that I've been reading a lot about American running, mostly on the West Coast from the 60s and early 70s primarily. And that's BRS, the early days of Nike, Bowerman, all this stuff I talked about back in the Cortez video. But there's a bunch of other stuff, and I drove through a lot of those areas, specifically Cal Poly Humboldt, the Redwoods, Eugene, Cost Bay. I saw the Prefontaine mural. It was really interesting to see this stuff, and it really made a lot of that stuff that I'm reading really real, and it was really actually quite cool. None of that was planned, it just sort of happened to work out that way. But overall, it was a great trip. So now that I'm back in Taipei, I'm ready to jump into the speed work that I talked about in a video a couple weeks ago, the 801 mile training that I'm going to do. Link in the description if you're interested in seeing that. And I was going to use this week as a transition week just to get my body used to running again, and then hit the ground running with the 12-week plan on Monday, and really dig into it. Problem is, we now have a pretty massive typhoon headed for Taiwan that's going to hit us probably Tuesday, Wednesday. Now, typhoons are pretty common here in Taiwan, and I'm up in Taipei and we're protected by the mountains, so we don't really get a direct hit from really any of the storms. We just get a ton of rain. Like, I'm talking a ton of rain, and I'm expecting that. So I may have to postpone my kicking this off and use next week as a bit more of a transition week. But I'm excited to be back, and I'm excited to get into training once the weather clears up a little bit and really get into it. I'm going to start off here with something that I don't really talk about ever on this channel, and that's the comments. Now, I love the conversation in the comments on this channel, and that's why I reply to every comment that I can see. And it's part of what I love about this channel and producing this content is the back and forth and the conversation in the comments. And I think as far as YouTube channels go, I'm pretty lucky that I don't get a lot of trolly comments. I get some, I deal with them, but for the most part, I have a really good community and a really good commenter base on this channel. And once in a while, though, I'll get a comment that I read it and I'm like, huh, really? And then I'll read it again and I'm like, I don't know how to respond to this. And I got one of those recently on a video that really had nothing to do with what the commenter was talking about, but I thought I would call it out. Now, I'm not going to call out the video this was on. You can probably find it. I'm also not going to call out the commenter either because this is already getting more attention, but it's something I want to address because it's an interesting point that's related to Shoe Talk. In fact, it's very related to Shoe Talk, and it got me thinking quite a bit. Now, I'm going to look at my screen. I'm going to read some of this comment verbatim because you kind of need to hear it the way it was written. So, overall, this comment was pretty ranty, and it starts with training in full race shoes, even on your easy days, is the way you should do it. The only reason trainer shoes exist is to have people who are new to running or want to feel like a runner get comfortable shoes that serve as lifestyle shoes. Shoes with no plates or rods are shoes that people can look the part, and they also meet a price point. And YouTubers, like myself, perpetuate these lies to promote consumerism. These lies that you need a trainer to actually train in, not training 100% in racers. You are all shills for shoe companies. Just come out and admit it. So there was other stuff in the comment, and we went back and forth because I actually replied to this, and he doubled down on this a few times. I don't know what to say, but it's an interesting thing from a shoe perspective in shoe talk. Now, this comment, it was so interesting to me. I don't look at it as a troll comment. This was his opinion. Cool, great. I respect that. That's why I replied to it in all earnesty. But what really kind of confuses me is that as a YouTuber, as on this channel, I talk a lot about running shoe rotations, but I'm not one of those YouTubers that's telling you you need 5, 6, 8 shoes to make a running shoe rotation. I talk a lot about most runners are probably going to be totally fine with a 2 to 3 shoe rotation. Really, the 3 shoe rotation is if you race. Otherwise, just having 2 trainers you can rotate is probably all most people need. Now, any more than that, and I've talked about and I've shown rotations with more shoes than that, you're really just min-maxing and getting really specialized shoes for specific workouts or maximizing certain distances or racing or, whatever that is. But most people can get by with that trainer racer pair or that trainer fast shoe pair. Now, this pairing of shoes has really gone back to the foundations of modern running. Now, I've been reading a lot about the history of running, and I've actually gone back further into the Victorian era and gotten into the roots of where running, how we look at modern running today, where that comes from. I'm going to make content all about this probably in October, November, but going back to the Victorian era where modern running really kind of comes from, the way we think about running right now, cross country, that kind of stuff. The idea of having a shoe that you're racing in, doing your cross country or Hares and Harrier races, that idea starts there. Then having a trainer shoe or a secondary pair of shoes that you're not racing in to save your race shoes, because again, shoes back then, and really running shoes up until the late 1950s, were kind of leather, hard-soled shoes. They might be multi-purpose. They might be for football or rugby or some other grass-type activity. But they were very specialized, very expensive shoes. You didn't just go down to the local store and get a pair of Nikes or Adidas. These were shoes made by cobblers that were very specific to, running. Very unique, very expensive. Even runners who had a pair of race shoes probably either had another pair of trainers because they were saving the race shoes, and that pair of trainers was an older pair of race shoes that are worn out, so they're saving the newer race shoes, or they're racing in a pair of shoes and they're training barefoot because they can't afford to buy another pair. They don't want another pair. They're just used to running barefoot. That kind of goes all the way up into the 1950s, but still the pairing of a trainer and a racer is sort of just fundamental, foundational to running at this point. I don't see it as like running shoe companies or big shoe, perpetrating some lie to sell more shoes. Yes, we've gotten some very specialized trainers, and I think that's gotten a little overblown. I think there's too many specialized shoes at this point, but that's what you're looking for and that's what you want. Cool. But most people don't need those. But still, training in a trainer and racing in a racer, I can't argue with the fact that that's just how it is. That's what most people should do. Even if you want to be training in a race shoe, and I'm also a YouTuber that talks a lot about training in race shoes. The Tempo Trainer, Super Trainer, Plated Trainer, all of those shoes, I typically don't think there's a lot of use for them. I would rather run a lot in a daily trainer and train in my race shoe to get used to the race shoe. And I talk a lot about this on this channel. So that commenter even calling me out specifically as someone who probably more than a lot of people talks about training in race shoes more than a lot of others, again, blows my mind. But it's an interesting topic. I'm going to come back to this whole pairing of trainer and racer, because I think it's really interesting in how it threads through the history of running. And I just touched on it here in this little rant, but there'll be more to say here. But again, comments are interesting. This comment specifically just really made me step back and be like, this person really means what they're saying. Let's move on to the Adidas shoes and talk about Adidas shoes, which I think will probably make a lot of people happy because a lot of September on this channel was Nike content. Now, I don't necessarily plan, and I actually try to avoid making a full month kind of about a single brand, but I did warn everyone back in August that September is going to be a lot of Nike content because I just had a lot of stuff that piled up. And now that the 6 videos really came out while I was away, they kind of thread together in a larger narrative. So I'm proud of those videos. I think the comments were really, really good. I think most people enjoyed them. But now there's a lot of Adidas stuff to talk about. And the first thing to really talk about is the Adios Pro 4. Now, we knew this shoe was coming. We knew it would be released and announced at Berlin. We knew there'd be limited pairs available in Berlin, and there'll probably be some light drops online here or there the rest of the year. But the shoe's coming out next year in January. Not a surprise. It's also not really a surprise about what the shoe was, because we saw so much of it in leaks. We saw every single angle of it in leaks. But there is something to address, and it's been frustrating me over the past few days. And that is the running warehouse video where they announced it with Believe in the Run, where they announced the Adios Pro 4, and the Forbidden Red shoe, the Adios 9, was also in that video. Because that video is almost a year old. That video was recorded at the running event last year in 2023. And it has outdated information, even though Patrick Nava, who is the VP of product running specific, I believe, at Adidas, even though he was the one showing the shoe and saying what he said in that video, it was almost a year old. The team changed a lot of the final things for the production release of the Adios Pro 4, but that running warehouse video has a specific thing in it that I'm seeing repeated all over the shoe internet that I keep trying to correct, because Patrick himself corrected it on the Believe in the Run podcast. Put a link to both these in the description. And that's around the midsole composition. Now, if you look at this exploded view of the Adios Pro 3, you'll see that there's an upper and a lower piece of the midsole. There's 2 pieces of the midsole because the rods are in between that. Then there's the insole above it and there's the outsole below it. Now, in the running warehouse video, that's still up, and running warehouse has not corrected or put any kind of disclaimer. I did comment in that video and explain everything I'm about to say. We'll see if that even stays. But what Patrick said in the running warehouse video, again, almost a year ago, was that the upper piece of foam is Lightstrike Pro and the lower piece of foam is Lightstrike Pro Evo, meaning it was the same foam that was in the Evo 1. And then the upper piece of foam was, the same Lightstrike Pro that we've known. That was where that shoe was a year ago. But Patrick confirmed again on the more recent Believe in the Run podcast, which I believe was recorded in the past couple weeks, that over the past year, the team has evolved the midsole foam into both the upper and lower part being Lightstrike Pro, the supercritical TPEE foam that we know as Lightstrike Pro. We've known that for a long time. However, he said it is a new formulation. It's softer, it's more airy, and he said it has better resilience. We'll see about that once the kind of longer term reviews of the shoe come out. But he corrected it in the Believe in the Run podcast, but I don't think a lot of people are seeing that. I think more people are seeing the running warehouse video, and they're all just spreading this that, oh, there's Evo 1 foam, there's the Lightstrike Pro Evo foam in the Adios Pro 4. There's not. Now, I'm trying to correct that. I'm trying to correct that in my comments. I'm trying to correct that wherever I see it on YouTube or Instagram or Reddit, wherever I'm seeing it. But it's just frustrating that running warehouse is just letting that video sit up there, and they're not really putting a asterisk on it. They're not trying to correct it. They're not putting a pinned comment explaining it. That video is very problematic. It's problematic for a lot of reasons, but this comment, I think, is just going to be really frustrating, because I think you're just going to keep seeing this said over and over and over for the next few months, unless Running Warehouse changes the video, updates something, or they, delete the video altogether, which I doubt they'll do. But I want to set the record straight. Again, I'll keep on, fixing this wherever I see it, but the Adios Pro 4 has Lightstrike Pro foam, supercritical TPE foam. Both the top and lower pieces are the same. It's a new formulation. It's more airy, it's softer, and it should have better resilience according to Adidas. Keep that in mind. Now, another Adios Pro 4 conundrum, I guess, and this is one Adidas has created for themselves, is something we're going to see play out, I think, a bit in Berlin, but we're going to see that over the fall marathon season. And that is, I'm curious how Adidas is going to wean their elite runners off of the Evo 1. Because objectively, the Evo 1 is a better shoe than the Adios Pro 4. Now, I'm not saying the Adios Pro 4 isn't a good shoe. It's going to be an outstanding shoe. But for an elite who has the training, the mechanics, the strength to get the most out of the Evo 1, and that's really who the Evo 1 is made for, the Adios Pro 4 will be a good shoe, but it's not going to be as optimized for an elite as the Evo 1. So I'm curious how quickly Adidas is going to be able to wean their elites off of the Evo 1. Now, in Berlin, I expect to see kind of a mix of Adios Pro 4s and Evo 1s, depending on the racers. The big marquee Adidas names probably will be in the Adios Pro 4 because that's, again, the big show for the shoe. But I do expect to see a lot of Evo 1s out there still. Now, Adidas doesn't want to keep making the Evo 1. They want to move everyone to the Adios Pro 4 because that's their latest, greatest. They want to sell it. That looks good. But also, they don't want to keep producing the Evo 1 because it's expensive. They're losing money every single pair that they make. And I've talked about the actual price of that shoe. Link in the description if you're interested. So I'm thinking over this fall marathon season, we'll see more and more Adios Pro 4s kind of come into the Adidas Elites. But the problem there too is that the Adidas Elites, for the most part, have probably trained most of the summer or did their build for their fall marathons in Evo 1s, not Adios Pro 4s. And they're not going to want to change for the race. They're just people, elites don't do that. Some will, but I don't think a lot will. So it's going to be interesting how much by the spring marathon season that the Adios Pro 4 will overtake and replace the Evo 1. I'm actually curious if we'll see any Evo 1s in the spring marathon season next year in 2025. And again, I want to see how much Adidas can shut this problem down, the same problem that Nike has right now with their elites, because Nike's elites are running in really 3, possibly 4 generations of Vaporflies and Alphaflies currently. It's gotten better since the Olympics. You see a lot more Alphafly 3s because it's much more commonly available, but you still see Next Percent 2s, you still see Alphafly 1s. I did see a Next Percent 1, the original Next Percent in there. Eliud Kipchoge was in his Alphafly 2s. It's kind of a mess from a brand standpoint because the brand wants to have their marquee latest greatest shoe up there on their best athletes on podiums. They don't want the older stuff out there. And I think Adidas is really conscious of that too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly this transition from the Evo 1 to the Adios Pro 4 actually happens. And the last little tidbit around the Evo 1 is I'm confident there's going to be an Evo 2. And we may see that in the spring or probably next fall, the fall 2025 marathon season. Because I think Adidas is going to want to continue to push the boundary of the weight of the shoes, of the performance of the shoes, and really push things forward. And I think their elites are also going to ask for that. So I'm not going to be surprised if we see an Evo 2 on the feet of elites either later this fall or in the spring 2025 season. Now, there's nothing on the World Athletics approved shoe list for this, but that doesn't mean it can't pop up really at any point. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye out for what the next gen Evo will be. And it's not necessarily the Evo SL. Moving to the Evo SL, and this was the surprise really of this release on September 25th, because while we had seen there was an Evo C in the leaks, we didn't really know what it was. Now we know what it is, and it's the Evo SL. Now, what this shoe is a performance trainer, a non-plated performance trainer. Think of it as a Boston 12 with no rods in it. That's essentially what you're getting there. Now, I've seen a bunch of questions about this shoe, about what is going to be the difference between the Evo SL and the Adios 9. And I've been responding to these as well, but I wanted to kind of set that straight here. Now, they both are non-plated Lightstrike Pro shoes, but they're very, very different. And frankly, I don't see why there's any confusion as to which one is going to be the better one for what you're trying to do. The Evo SL is a trainer. And while it is Lightstrike Pro, I believe they said the formulation of Lightstrike Pro in that shoe is not the Lightstrike Pro we have now, say in the Adios Pro 3 or the Boston 12, but it's much closer to that. It's slightly refined, but it's much closer to the classic Lightstrike Pro feel. Now, there is a midfoot shank in that, and Adidas often can't help themselves with their midfoot shanks. Midfoot shank for Adidas doesn't necessarily mean just in the midfoot. It sometimes goes into the forefoot, often goes into the heel. We'll see what's actually in that shoe, but it is going to be a fairly robust, about 30 in the forefoot, 38 in the heel, I believe, something around that. About a 6.5, 7 mil drop from the specs that we've seen. The specs are evolving a little bit on that shoe, but that is a trainer, and it's going to feel like a trainer. Additionally, it has a continental outsole. It essentially has the same outsole, at least the same size of outsole that the Boston 12 had, which I think is frankly great. So again, think of the Evo SL as a trainer or as a Boston 12 that's much less stiff, because the Boston 12 is a very stiff shoe because there's no rods in it. Now, it's built as a trainer. I think the upper and the fit of that shoe is going to be much more similar to, say, the Adidas SL2 that came out this year, though it looks like it's going to be probably a little bit more racy than the SL2, but it's going to be a very Adidas training fit. So again, the Evo SL is a trainer. It's going to be a very classic Adidas feel. Now, the Adios 9 is a racer, and it's going to feel extremely different, not because it's lower stack. We know it's about 20 mil in the forefoot. We know it has an 8 mil drop, so it's about 20, 28, somewhere around that. And it's going to be very lightweight because it essentially has the same upper as the Adios Pro 4. And I believe, Adidas hasn't confirmed this, but I believe it's going to have the new formulation of Lightstrike Pro in the midsole. So it's going to have that more airy, softer, more resilient Lightstrike Pro in the midsole. And it's an Adios. And again, this is where Adidas can't help themselves to the midfoot shanks, because the Adios always had a midfoot shank that bled into the forefoot and bled into the heel. Now they say there's no stiffening agent in this shoe and there's just a very minimal midfoot shank. We'll see what minimal means for Adidas. It doesn't often mean what you think it means, but that should be a very flexible, very soft shoe. Additionally, it has the new CPU outsole, the light traction outsole. Again, Adidas is going heavy with the light product names on things. Now, that CPU outsole is going to be much lighter, but it's going to be a much softer, more compliant feel to the ground. I've talked a lot about this in other videos with outsoles like this. So the Adios 9 is going to feel very soft on the ground. It's going to feel very much like a classic racing flat. It's going to be more resilient. It's going to be softer on the ground. It's going to be much lighter weight, and it's going to have a race fit because it's going to fit just like the Adios Pro 4. So it's a true race flat. We haven't seen a race flat from Adidas really like this in a long time. Yes, the Adidas 678 has been out there. I love the Adios 8, but they weren't quite as race flat as this. And what's really interesting here is that Nike and Adidas seem to be swapping perspectives on this race flat shoe. The Adios 9 should be a lot more like the Streak Fly from Nike than really any other shoe. So again, the Evo SL will be a plateless or rodless Boston 12. The Adios 9 should feel a lot like the Streak Fly did from Nike last year. Now, Nike has moved the Streak Fly 2 more towards something that's more like the Takumi Sen, actually a little bit more aggressive. So it's really interesting the two brands are flipping there. And lastly, on the Evo SL specifically, there's a little bit of a marketing disconnect here. Now, the shoe looks for all purposes to be a non-plated performance trainer from Adidas, very similar to the Pegasus Plus from Nike. Super foam, no stiffening agent, nothing in the midsole other than some sort of midfoot shank, and, performance-oriented tempo trainer, right? But the marketing that we're seeing from Adidas on the product page for the Evo SL has a lot of lifestyle overtones. And you see images like this, or this, or this. And they can be running. That can be you out for your sort of training run with your friends and you stop for a coffee. I think that's pretty common, but it's a weird disconnect for me. And this is a performance shoe. The way Patrick Nava talked about it is it's a very performance-oriented tempo trainer, performance trainer. But Adidas marketing is marketing it as something that can be a lot of different things. And they're calling it specifically, it's a shoe that fits into fast culture or a fast lifestyle. I've seen both. The copy has changed on the product pages for Adidas. And I don't quite understand that, but cool. This is one of those things where it's a disconnect from like the product team, how they envision the shoe and how it's going to be used and how they've designed it to be used, and how the marketing team maybe wants to spin it to kind of give it a little bit more legs. Back to my original point about the guy calling me out for saying trainers or just, big shoe perpetuating, selling an image. I think that's kind of where he was reacting from, is he saw this too at some point. It's confusing. It's weird. It doesn't quite make sense because even with the Adidas SL2, we didn't really see them market that shoe really from a lifestyle angle at all. So again, it's strange. Plus with the Evo name on the Evo SL, the Evo is about evolution. It's their kind of Adidas and Adidas pushing running forward. Bringing that into lifestyle, Evo into lifestyle, it's a little strange. So there seems to be a little disconnect at Adidas HQ over there in Herzo, but I'm sure now that there's a bunch of influencers that have the Evo SL, we'll see some reviews come out over the next week or two, and we'll get a real sense of what that shoe is. But for all prospects, it should be a very exciting shoe. And otherwise, talking about shoes, just talking about what I'm training in, I can't make this all Adidas focused. I got to bring in my Nike here. Basically, what I was running in for September before I went away were really these 4 shoes. The Peg 41 for really kind of everything, easy runs, everything in between. The Peg Plus, I was doing all of my workouts in the Peg Plus, and I've really been focusing on doing a lot of workouts in non-plated shoes. And I'll talk more about this in videos coming up on the channel in October and November. But that's been an outstanding shoe for that. And I've been doing a lot of track work in the Victory 2 spikes, which now I have a review on the channel of that. Put a link in the description. And lastly, the Vaporfly 3 is not a shoe I ran in September, but it is a shoe that I'm going to be swapping back and forth with the Victory 2 for road running. So for that really faster key workouts, or I'm really trying to hit a pace, that would be the plated shoe that I'm doing that in. But the bulk of the workouts I'll be focusing on, at least one of the key workouts per week, will be done in the Peg Plus, because again, focusing on building out foot strength and doing that faster running in a non-plated shoe, and the Peg Plus has been very brilliant for that. So this is the Nike rotation that I'll be using for most of the fall. Shouldn't be a surprise. I've talked a lot about this on the channel, but I just wanted to set that one straight as well in this video. That's what I'll be moving forward with in my speed training for the fall. And looking ahead to content in October, it's going to be a very mixed month. Now, I'm going to be here in Taipei all month, not going anywhere, and there'll be a mix of brands on this channel. There'll be a new brand on this channel, and it's one I'm excited to talk about. There'll be some exciting content around that. There'll be a couple Nike videos, a couple Nike reviews. Sorry for those of you who don't like Nike. I'm mostly a Nike runner. You're going to see a lot of Nike stuff still, but it's not going to be all Nike. There'll be some Adidas stuff. There'll be some editorial stuff, some design stuff. There'll be some more shoe talk. There's going to be a range of stuff on the channel in October, which if you got tired of just seeing only Nike stuff in September, October is going to be a very, very different month. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.